Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Setup. Warren Barron adjusted his dress uniform one final time as the plane touched down at Fort Campbell. After 18 months deployed in Afghanistan, the decorated Army Ranger was finally coming home to his wife Samantha and their 8-year-old son Jake. Warren had been counting down the days, dreaming of Jake's smile and Sam's embrace. Warren wasn't just any soldier. At 34, he'd served 3 tours, earned a Silver Star for valor, and commanded respect from every man under him. Standing 6'3" with steel-gray eyes and a jaw that could cut glass, Warren carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd stared death in the face and walked away. More importantly, he was a devoted father who'd video called Jake every week, helping with homework from half a world away. The surprise homecoming had been Samantha's idea, or so his commanding officer had told him. Colonel Jeffrey Cooper had pulled Warren aside 3 days ago with a grin. "Pack your bags, Sergeant Major. Your wife wants to surprise your boy. She's arranged everything." Warren's heart had swelled. Despite the strain of deployment, Sam had always been supportive, sending care packages and photos of Jake's Little League games. Sure, their video calls had become less frequent in recent months, and Sam seemed distant, but Warren attributed it to the stress of single parenting. The base was alive with activity as Warren made his way to the family waiting area. He spotted familiar faces, other soldiers reuniting with loved ones, tears of joy, children running into their father's arms. Warren scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for Jake's messy brown hair and Sam's auburn curls. But they weren't there. "Sergeant Major Barron?" A young corporal approached. "Sir, I have a message from your wife. She said to meet her at home due to a scheduling conflict." Warren's stomach tightened, but he nodded. Maybe Jake had a baseball game. Maybe some got confused about the timing. He caught a taxi to their house in Clarksville, anticipation building with every mile. The house looked different somehow. Newer car in the driveway, unfamiliar decorations. Warren paid the driver and walked to his front door, key ready. But before he could insert it, the door opened. Samantha stood there, but not the Sam he remembered. Her hair was professionally styled. She wore expensive clothes he'd never seen, and her face showed not joy but shock and something else, guilt. "Warren," she stammered. "You're early." "Surprise," he said, forcing a smile despite the cold reception. "Where's Jake? I thought he'd be here." Sam's eyes darted nervously. He's at a friend's house. Tommy Gilbert's birthday party. You know how kids are." Warren knew his son. Jake wouldn't miss his daddy coming home for any party. "Which friend? I'll go pick him up." "No," Sam said too quickly. The party just started. Let's go inside and catch up first." As Warren stepped into his own home, he noticed more changes. New furniture, expensive electronics, artwork he'd never seen. On their combined military salary and Sam's part-time job at the bank, this level of luxury should have been impossible. "Sam, where did all this come from?" Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from upstairs. A man's voice called down, "Babe, who was at the door?" Warren's blood turned to ice. Sam's face went white as a stranger appeared at the top of the stairs, tall, lean, with slicked back hair and a smug expression that immediately soured when he saw Warren's uniform. "Oh shit," the man muttered. "Craig," Sam whispered. "This is Warren. Jake's father." Craig Novak descended the stairs with false bravado, wearing a bathrobe and an expensive watch. "Well, this is awkward. Thought you weren't supposed to be back for another month, soldier boy." Warren's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained steady. "Where's my son?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Sam couldn't meet his eyes. Craig just shrugged. "Probably at that bus station downtown, knowing that little brat. Kid's been nothing but trouble since I moved in." The words hit Warren like shrapnel. Bus station. His 8-year-old son. At a bus station. "What did you just say?" Warren's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Sam finally looked up, tears in her eyes. "Warren, I can explain." But Warren was already moving toward the door. His son, his brave, sweet boy, was alone at a bus station while his mother entertained her boyfriend in the home Warren had worked to provide. As he reached for his keys, Craig called out, "Hey, where you going? We need to talk about this situation." Warren turned back slowly, his gray eyes promising violence. "The only situation here is that my son is missing. When I find him, we'll have a very different conversation." The drive to downtown Clarksville felt endless, but Warren's military training kicked in. Stay focused. Mission first. Get Jake safe, then deal with the betrayal. Chapter 2. The Breaking Point. Warren spotted Jake immediately. A small figure hunched on a bench outside the Greyhound station, clutching a stuffed military bear Warren had sent him last Christmas. The sight nearly broke his heart. His son looked so small, so lost, wearing his favorite Captain America t-shirt and jeans that were too big for his thin frame. "Jake," Warren called softly, approaching slowly so as not to startle him. The boy's head snapped up, and Warren saw tears streaming down his face. But then Jake's eyes widened with disbelief and hope. "Daddy," Jake whispered, as if afraid this might be a dream. Warren knelt down and opened his arms. Jake launched himself forward, sobbing into his father's chest. Warren held his son tight, feeling the boy's small body shaking with relief and emotion. "I'm here, buddy. Daddy's here. I thought you weren't coming back," Jake hiccuped. Mom said you abandoned us." Warren's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. "That's not true, Jake. I would never abandon you. Never. What are you doing here with this bag?" Jake pulled back, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Craig said I was too much trouble. He said Mom would be happier without me around. So I thought maybe if I left, you'd still love Mom and maybe come home." The words cut deeper than any enemy blade. Warren cupped his son's face in his hands. "Listen to me, Jake. Nothing would ever make me stop loving you. You're not trouble. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Do you understand?" Jake nodded, fresh tears starting. "But your mom said a lot of things that weren't true. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving you again." Warren picked up Jake's small duffel bag, heartbreakingly packed with just a few clothes, the stuffed bear, and a photo of Warren in uniform. Inside, Warren was burning with rage, but his son needed stability right now, not anger. "Come on, let's go get some food. You hungry?" They drove to Jake's favorite diner, where Warren learned the full extent of the betrayal. Over chocolate chip pancakes, Jake told him about Craig moving in 3 months ago, about being told to stay in his room when Craig was around, about hearing his mother tell Craig that Warren probably wouldn't make it back anyway. "Craig doesn't like when I talk about you," Jake said quietly. "He said soldiers are just killers, and I shouldn't be proud of having a daddy who hurts people." Warren's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "What else did Craig say?" "Lots of stuff. He said Mom was wasting her life waiting for a loser. He said when you came back, you'd probably be crazy and hurt people. He didn't know I was listening when he told Mom she should divorce you while you were gone so you couldn't take any of their money." Their money. Warren had been sending half his combat pay home to support his family, unknowingly funding his wife's affair and his son's emotional abuse. "Jake, did Craig or Mom ever hurt you? Hit you?" Jake shook his head. "No, but Craig yells a lot. And he told Mom she had to choose between you and me or him. Mom said Craig made her happy in ways you never could." Warren closed his eyes briefly, processing the betrayal. His wife hadn't just cheated. She'd emotionally abandoned their son and let her boyfriend convince an 8-year-old that he was unwanted. "Dad, are you okay?" Warren opened his eyes and forced a smile. "I'm okay, buddy, but I need you to know something important. Sometimes adults make very bad choices. Your mom made some bad choices, and so did Craig. But none of that is your fault, and none of it changes how much I love you. Are you and Mom going to get divorced?" The question was asked with the matter-of-fact tone of a child who'd already accepted his world was broken. Warren felt something cold and calculating settle in his chest. Not anger, but purpose. "We'll figure everything out. But first, I need to make sure you're safe and know you're loved. You're staying with me from now on." Jake's face lit up for the first time all day. "Really? You're not going back to Afghanistan?" "My deployment's over, son. I'm home for good." After dinner, Warren drove to his buddy Tim Shepard's house. Tim was a retired Marine who ran a private security company and had always been like an uncle to Jake. Warren needed someone he trusted absolutely to watch Jake while he dealt with Samantha and Craig. Warren, Tim's wife, Leslie, welcomed them warmly. "And Jake, how's my favorite little soldier?" While Leslie fussed over Jake, getting him set up with video games and snacks, Warren and Tim stepped outside. "Brother, you look like you're about to go to war," Tim observed. Warren filled Tim in on everything. The affair, the emotional abandonment of Jake, finding his son at the bus station ready to run away because he'd been convinced he was unwanted. Tim's expression grew darker with each revelation. "Jesus, Warren, what do you need? I need Jake safe while I handle this. And Tim, I need you to trust that whatever I do next, it's justified." Tim studied his friend's face, the cold calculation, the protective fury of a father whose child had been harmed. "How bad are we talking?" "Bad enough that they'll wish they'd never touched my family." Tim nodded slowly. "Jake can stay here as long as needed. Leslie loves that kid like her own. But Warren, be careful. Don't do anything that'll take you away from Jake again." Warren clasped his friend's shoulder. "I won't, but they're going to pay for what they did to him, what they did to us." As Warren drove back toward town, his mind was already working through possibilities. He'd spent years in special operations, learning to identify weaknesses, exploit advantages, and neutralize threats. Samantha and Craig had made themselves his enemies the moment they threw Jake away like trash. Time to show them what happened when someone threatened a ranger's family. Chapter 3. Gathering Intelligence. Warren didn't go home that night. Instead, he checked into a motel across town and began what he did best: reconnaissance. Years of military intelligence training had taught him that information was more powerful than weapons, and before he made his move, he needed to know everything about his enemies. He started with Craig Novak. A few phone calls to contacts who owed him favors revealed Craig's background. 32, divorced, worked as a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company. More importantly, Craig had a gambling problem and a history of bouncing between women, usually leaving them financially drained. Warren's blood chilled when he learned Craig had been married twice before, both marriages ending when his wives discovered his affairs and mounting debts. This wasn't love. Craig was a predator who targeted vulnerable women with resources. The next morning, Warren positioned himself across from Craig's workplace, a medical supply company in Nashville. He watched Craig's routine: late arrival, long lunches, early departures. The man carried himself with unearned arrogance, flirting with every female employee and treating subordinates poorly. Warren's phone buzzed with a text from Tim. "Jake's doing great. Kid beat me at Call of Duty 3 times. Says he learned tactics from his dad." The message strengthened Warren's resolve. Jake was safe, which meant Warren could focus entirely on the mission ahead. That afternoon, Warren drove to the bank where Samantha worked as a loan officer. He parked where he could observe without being seen, watching his wife of 10 years interact with customers and colleagues. Sam had always been beautiful, but now she seemed different, harder somehow, more calculated in her interactions. At 3 p.m., Craig's BMW pulled up. Warren watched through binoculars as Craig entered the bank and headed straight to Sam's office. Through the glass walls, Warren saw them embrace intimately, completely unprofessional and in full view of Sam's coworkers. Warren took photos. An hour later, Sam and Craig left together in Craig's car. Warren followed at a distance as they drove to an upscale restaurant in downtown Nashville. He positioned himself at the bar where he could overhear their conversation without being noticed. "The soldier boy situation is getting complicated," Craig was saying, cutting into an expensive steak. "We need to expedite our timeline. I can't just kick him out, Craig. He has legal rights. Not if he's unstable. PTSD, threatening behavior, unsafe around the kid. I know a guy who can document mental health concerns. We get him committed for evaluation, file for emergency custody, and divorce while he's locked up." Sam hesitated. "That seems extreme." "Babe, we've planned this for months. Once you have his deployment pay and the divorce settlement, we can start fresh somewhere else. Maybe California, like we talked about." Warren's hands clenched around his whiskey glass. They hadn't just betrayed him. They'd been actively planning to destroy his life and steal his son. What about Jake? Sam asked quietly. Craig's expression darkened. The kid's a complication. Maybe military school or foster care. Honestly, Sam, you'd be better off without him. Kids tie you down. Warren watched his wife's face carefully. For a moment, he saw conflict in her eyes. The mother he'd married warring with the person she'd become. But then she nodded. You're right. Jake would be better off with structure anyway. That was all Warren needed to hear. Any remaining hope for reconciliation died in that moment. Sam wasn't a victim of Craig's manipulation. She was a willing participant in abandoning their son. Warren left the restaurant and spent the evening making more calls. His military contacts were extensive, and several owed him their lives. By midnight, he had Craig's complete financial history, massive gambling debts, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a loan shark in Vegas who'd been looking for him. More importantly, Warren discovered that Craig had been embezzling from his company, skimming money from medical equipment sales and falsifying inventory records. The company hadn't discovered it yet, but Warren had enough evidence to expose it. The pieces of his plan were falling into place. The next morning, Warren called his attorney, Abraham Dunn, a former JAG officer who specialized in military family law. Abraham had handled several difficult cases for Warren's unit and understood the unique challenges faced by deployed soldiers. Warren, good to have you back, Abraham said warmly. I heard about the surprise homecoming. How's the family? Warren explained the situation without emotion, presenting facts like a military briefing. Abraham listened with growing concern. This is serious, Warren. Parental alienation, abandonment, conspiracy to commit fraud. We can build a strong case. But I have to ask, what are you planning to do about this? I'm going to protect my son and ensure justice is served. Warren, as your attorney and friend, I need to advise you against taking any action that could jeopardize your custody rights or freedom. Warren was quiet for a moment. Abraham, they convinced my 8-year-old son that he was unwanted trash. They plan to have me declared mentally incompetent and steal everything I've worked for. What would you do? Abraham sighed. I'd want to destroy them, but I'd let the legal system handle it. The legal system takes months or years. My son needed protection yesterday. Warren's voice hardened. I need you to file for emergency custody and divorce proceedings. Use the evidence I'm sending you. But Abraham, don't ask about anything else. After hanging up, Warren drove to a storage unit he'd rented years ago for his military gear. Inside were items from his special operations days, surveillance equipment, communications gear, and other tools he'd hoped never to need again. Craig and Samantha thought they were dealing with a simple soldier who'd been conveniently absent. They were about to learn they'd targeted a special forces veteran who'd spent years neutralizing threats in hostile territory. Warren smiled coldly as he loaded his equipment into his truck. The real war was about to begin. Chapter 4. The First Move. Warren struck at dawn on Saturday, when Craig would be at his most vulnerable. Using skills learned in covert operations, Warren had spent the previous night installing micro cameras and audio equipment in Craig's apartment. The man's security was laughably poor, a simple door lock and no alarm system. Warren positioned himself in a rented van across the street, monitoring feeds from inside Craig's apartment. At 7 a.m., Craig stumbled out of bed, nursing a hangover from another night of excessive drinking. Warren watched him fumble with his phone, cursing about missed calls. The first call Craig returned was to his bookie in Las Vegas. Mickey, I told you I'd have the money by Monday, Craig said, pacing nervously. I just need one more weekend. No, don't send Tony out here. I'm good for it. You know I am. Warren smiled grimly. Mickey Cassidy was a name that had surfaced in his research, a Vegas loan shark with a reputation for violent debt collection. Craig owed him $47,000. The second call was to Samantha. Babe, we need to move faster on the soldier situation. My Vegas problem is heating up, and I need access to those accounts soon. Warren recorded every word, building his evidence file. But recording wasn't enough. He needed to apply pressure. At noon, while Craig was at the gym, Warren entered the apartment again. He left no trace of his presence, but he planted something that would shake Craig's confidence. A single playing card, the ace of spades, tucked under Craig's pillow with a note written in block letters. We know. The psychological warfare began immediately. When Craig returned from the gym, Warren watched through the hidden cameras as he discovered the card. Craig's face went white, his hands shaking as he read the note. What the fuck? Craig muttered, checking locks and looking out windows. He immediately called Mickey in Vegas. Did you send someone to my place? Someone left the card. No. Then who? Craig's paranoia was escalating perfectly. That evening, Warren implemented phase 2. He learned Craig's routine included Saturday night poker games at a private club downtown. Warren arrived first, taking a seat at the bar where he could observe the games. Craig arrived at 9 p.m., still jumpy from the morning surprise. Warren watched him lose steadily at poker, his concentration shot by stress and alcohol. By 11 p.m., Craig was down $3,000 he couldn't afford. Warren waited until Craig stepped outside for a cigarette, then followed casually. Rough night at the tables, Warren said, stepping from the shadows. Craig spun around, and Warren was satisfied to see genuine fear in the man's eyes. This close, Warren's physical presence was intimidating. 6 inches taller, 50 pounds heavier, and carrying himself with the controlled menace of a professional warrior. Who the fuck are you? Craig stammered. I'm Jake Barron's father, the soldier boy whose son you threw away like trash. Craig's face cycled through emotions, fear, anger, then false bravado. Look, that was a misunderstanding. The kid was upset and... The kid, Warren interrupted, his voice deadly quiet, has a name. His name is Jake, and he was sitting at a bus station with a packed bag because you convinced him he was unwanted. Now hold on. Warren stepped closer, invading Craig's personal space. You told my 8-year-old son that his father abandoned him. You moved into my house, spent my money, and convinced my wife to throw away our child. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? Craig tried to step back, but found his retreat blocked by Warren's truck. This is harassment. I'll call the cops. Warren smiled coldly. Go ahead. While they're running your name, they'll discover some interesting things, like your gambling debts, your pending divorce fraud, your recent embezzlement from Meridian Medical Supply. The blood drained from Craig's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Warren pulled out a manila folder. Invoice fraud, inventory manipulation, kickbacks from vendors. Should I continue? Or would you prefer to discuss your debt to Mickey Cassidy in Vegas? Craig's legs nearly gave out. How do you? I'm very good at finding things out about people who threaten my family. Warren opened the folder, showing printouts of financial records. $47,000 to Mickey, $12,000 in credit card debt. And according to these medical supply records, you've been skimming money for 8 months. Jesus Christ, what do you want? Warren's expression never changed. I want you to understand something, Craig. You picked the wrong family to destroy. I've spent 15 years protecting this country from people who threaten innocent lives. Now someone threatened my son. Craig was sweating despite the cool evening air. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. There is no wrong foot. Warren cut him off. There's only what you did to Jake and what's going to happen because of it. Warren stepped back, giving Craig room to breathe. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave Nashville. If you contact Samantha, Jake, or anyone else in my family, these financial records go to your employer, the IRS, and Mickey Cassidy. You can't just. I can and I will. Warren's voice dropped to a whisper. I've killed men for threatening children, Craig. Don't test me. Craig stumbled toward his car, hands shaking as he fumbled with his keys. Warren watched him drive away erratically, no doubt racing home to check his apartment for more surprises. Warren returned to his surveillance van and settled in to watch the show. Through his cameras, he saw Craig tearing through his apartment, looking for bugs, checking windows and doors. The psychological pressure was working perfectly. At 2 a.m., Craig called Samantha in panic. Sam, we have a problem. Your husband, he knows everything. The money, Vegas, all of it. We need to leave town tonight. Warren could hear Sam's voice through the phone. What are you talking about? Warren's not smart enough to. He's not the same man who left for Afghanistan, Sam. This guy is dangerous. Professional dangerous. Warren smiled. Craig was right about that much. The naive husband who'd left for deployment was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned hard lessons about trust and consequences. The phone call continued for 20 minutes, with Craig begging Sam to run away with him, and Sam growing increasingly panicked. By 3 a.m., both of them were spiraling into fear and paranoia. Warren's first move was complete. He'd shaken Craig's confidence, exposed his vulnerabilities, and set the stage for Phase 2. More importantly, he'd begun to show Samantha exactly what kind of man she'd allied herself with, a coward who would abandon her the moment real pressure appeared. As he packed up his surveillance equipment, Warren felt the cold satisfaction of a mission progressing according to plan. Craig and Samantha had spent months plotting against him, thinking him safely distant and unaware. Now, they were about to learn what happened when you threatened a Special Forces operator's family. Chapter 5, Pressure Points. Sunday morning brought no peace for Craig and Samantha. Warren had spent the night implementing the next phase of his psychological campaign, and by 8 a.m., both targets were discovering just how thoroughly their lives could be disrupted. Craig woke to find his credit cards had been frozen and his bank accounts flagged for suspicious activity. Warren had anonymously reported potential identity theft and financial fraud, triggering automatic security protocols. While the banks investigated, Craig's access to funds was completely cut off. Samantha's day began with a call from her bank supervisor. "Sam, we need to talk about your relationship with Craig Novak. There are some concerns about potential conflicts of interest regarding loan approvals." Warren had carefully documented several instances where Samantha had approved Craig's loan applications despite his questionable credit. While not technically illegal, it violated bank policy and ethics guidelines. By noon, both Craig and Samantha were scrambling to understand how their carefully constructed deception was unraveling so quickly. Warren, meanwhile, was having lunch with his son at Tim Shepard's house. Jake was adjusting well, but Warren could see the emotional damage in his child's guarded behavior and frequent questions about whether Warren was really staying. "Dad, are you going to be mad at Mom forever?" Jake asked, pushing mashed potatoes around his plate. Warren chose his words carefully. "I'm disappointed in some choices your mom made, buddy. But my focus is on making sure you're safe and happy. Leslie said I might get to start a new school here, with kids I don't know about. All the stuff." Warren's heart broke a little more. His son was already learning to be ashamed of his mother's actions. "Jake, you have nothing to be embarrassed about. Adults made bad choices, but you're the best kid in the world. Any school would be lucky to have you." That afternoon, while Jake played video games with Tim's teenage son, Warren received a call from Abraham Dunn. "Warren, I filed the emergency custody petition and divorce papers. The evidence you provided is damning. But I have to tell you, there are rumors floating around town about Craig Novak having some kind of breakdown." "What kind of rumors?" "He's been telling people someone's harassing him, threatening him. He filed a police report claiming someone broke into his apartment." Warren smiled. "Is that right?" "Warren, please tell me you haven't done anything that could jeopardize our case." "I haven't broken any laws, Abraham, but I may have helped Craig realize the consequences of his actions." That evening, Warren implemented his next move. He discovered that Craig's employer, Meridian Medical Supply, was conducting their monthly inventory audit on Monday. Warren had prepared a detailed, anonymous report documenting Craig's embezzlement, complete with forged invoices, suspicious inventory discrepancies, and recorded phone conversations with vendors. The report was time-stamped and delivered to both the company's Internal Affairs Department and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division simultaneously. Warren also sent a carefully crafted message to Mickey Cassidy in Vegas. "Your friend Craig Novak is preparing to disappear with money he owes you. Thought you should know. A concerned citizen." By Monday morning, Craig's world was collapsing from multiple directions. First, his company's security team escorted him from the building as federal agents arrived to examine financial records. Craig's embezzlement scheme, which had been carefully hidden for months, was now exposed in excruciating detail. Second, Mickey Cassidy's debt collectors were en route from Las Vegas, having been informed that their target was attempting to flee with outstanding debts. Third, Samantha was being questioned by her bank's internal investigators about her relationship with Craig and the suspicious loan approvals. Warren watched it all unfold from his surveillance position, monitoring communications and documenting everything for the custody case. At 2 p.m., Craig called Samantha in complete panic. "They arrested me, Sam. The FBI embezzlement charges, they're talking about 10 years in federal prison." Samantha's voice was shrill. "What are you talking about? How did they find out? It has to be your husband. He said he'd destroy me. And now everything's falling apart. The Vegas guys are looking for me. My company fired me. And the feds have all my financial records." "Craig, calm down. We can figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out. I'm fucked, Sam. And if you're smart, you'll get away from me before they start looking at your involvement." Warren could hear Samantha's world cracking through the phone. "My involvement? Craig, you said everything was legal. Nothing we did was legal. The loan fraud, using your bank access, the plan to have Warren declared incompetent. All of it. If they investigate you, you'll lose everything." The call devolved into accusations and panic, with Craig ultimately hanging up on Samantha as federal agents returned to continue their interrogation. Warren had successfully driven a wedge between his two targets, turning them against each other through pressure and fear. Craig was facing serious federal charges, and Samantha was beginning to realize she'd been manipulated by a criminal who was now abandoning her. But Warren wasn't finished. The most important phase was yet to come, ensuring his son's safety and his own legal victory. That evening, Warren received a call from Samantha. Her voice was shaking, defeated. "Warren, we need to talk." "About what, Sam?" "About everything. About Jake, about what I've done. Craig told me some things, and I think I made some terrible mistakes." Warren's voice remained cold and professional. "The only mistake that matters is what you did to Jake. Everything else is just consequences. He's really gone, isn't he? Craig, I mean, he just left me to deal with all of this alone. That's what cowards do, Sam. They abandon people when things get difficult. Sound familiar?" The bar at home. Samantha began crying, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. She'd thrown away her marriage, abandoned her child, and aligned herself with a criminal who'd manipulated her into destroying her own life. "I want to see Jake," she whispered. "Jake doesn't want to see you right now. You convinced him he was unwanted. Remember? That takes time to heal. Warren, please. I know I screwed up, but he's my son too." "Is he? Because when Craig told you to choose between your child and your boyfriend, you chose Craig. When Jake packed a bag and ran away, you let him go. When push came to shove, you abandoned our son." Samantha sobbed into the phone. "I can change. I can make this right." "The time for making it right was when Jake needed you," Warren said quietly. "Now he needs stability and protection, and that's what I'm going to give him." Warren hung up, feeling no satisfaction in his wife's breakdown. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice and protecting his son from further harm. Tomorrow, the final phase would begin. Chapter 6, The Reckoning. Tuesday morning brought the court hearing for emergency custody, and Warren arrived at the Davidson County Courthouse prepared for war. Abraham Dunn met him outside, carrying thick files of evidence. "Warren, I've never seen a case this clear-cut," Abraham said. "The documentation you've provided, the recordings, the financial evidence, it's overwhelming. What about Craig?" "He's been denied bail due to flight risk. The embezzlement charges are federal, and the prosecutor thinks he's good for at least 8 years. He won't be a factor in Jake's life anymore." Inside the courtroom, Warren saw Samantha sitting with a court-appointed attorney, looking haggard and defeated. She'd aged years in the past few days, the weight of her choices finally visible on her face. Judge Catherine Springer reviewed the evidence methodically. Recordings of Craig dismissing Jake as too much trouble, documentation of Samantha's financial improprieties, photographs of Jake at the bus station with his pack bag, and testimonials from teachers who'd noticed changes in Jake's behavior over the past months. "Mrs. Barron," the judge said sternly, "the evidence suggests you abandoned your parental responsibilities and allowed your child to believe he was unwanted. How do you respond to these allegations?" Samantha's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him away and stood. "Your Honor, I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. I got involved with someone who convinced me that my husband wasn't coming back, that I deserved to be happy. But I never meant for Jake to be hurt. Intent is irrelevant when a child suffers emotional abandonment, Judge Springer replied. This court's primary concern is the welfare of the minor child. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting emergency custody to Sergeant Major Barron, with supervised visitation rights for the mother, pending a full custody evaluation. Warren felt a surge of relief and vindication. Jake was officially safe, and Samantha's parental rights were severely restricted until she could prove she was capable of putting her son's needs first. But as they left the courthouse, Warren knew the real work was just beginning. Jake needed healing, and that would take time, patience, and consistency. That afternoon, Warren drove to Tim Shepard's house to collect his son and share the good news. "Jake, you're going to be living with me from now on," Warren told him. The judge said so officially. Jake's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? Forever? Forever, buddy. No one's going to make you feel unwanted ever again." Jake hugged his father fiercely, and Warren felt the first real peace he'd experienced since coming home. His son was safe, legally protected, and beginning to believe that his father wasn't going anywhere. Over the next few days, Warren focused entirely on Jake's needs. They found a small apartment near Tim's house, so Jake could maintain the friendships he'd started. Warren enrolled Jake in counseling with Dr. Lori Yu, a child psychologist who specialized in parental alienation cases. "Jake's been through significant trauma," Dr. Yu explained to Warren. "The emotional abandonment, being told he was unwanted, the instability of his home life. These things affect a child's ability to trust and form secure attachments. But with consistency and patience, children are remarkably resilient." Warren threw himself into being the father Jake needed. They established routines, went to therapy together, and slowly began rebuilding the trust that had been damaged by months of psychological manipulation. 3 weeks after the custody hearing, Warren received an unexpected call from Samantha. "Warren, I've been in therapy. Dr. Robertson is helping me understand what I did, why I made those choices. I need to make amends." "Amends to who, Sam? To me, or to Jake?" "To both of you, but especially to Jake. I know he may not want to see me, but I have to try." Warren considered this. Dr. Yu had said that eventually, if Samantha was genuinely committed to change, it might be healthy for Jake to have a relationship with his mother, but only if she could consistently put Jake's needs first. "You can write him a letter," Warren said finally. "Dr. Yu will review it first. If she thinks it's appropriate, she'll help Jake decide if he wants to read it." "Thank you, Warren. And I'm sorry for everything. You were a good husband, and I threw it all away for someone who never cared about me at all." Warren felt no satisfaction in her admission. "The marriage is over, Sam. But Jake needs to know his mother loves him, and that what happened wasn't his fault. If you can do that consistently without putting your needs first, then maybe we can figure out a way forward." The letter Samantha wrote was surprisingly honest. She took full responsibility for her actions, apologized for making Jake feel unwanted, and expressed her love without making any demands or asking for forgiveness she hadn't earned. Dr. Yu worked with Jake for several sessions before he was ready to read it. When he did, he cried, not from sadness, but from relief that his mother finally acknowledged his worth. "Does this mean Mom loves me again?" Jake asked. "Your mom never stopped loving you, buddy. She just got confused and made bad choices. But love isn't just a feeling, it's actions. And if Mom wants to be part of your life, she'll have to prove she can make good choices about what's best for you." Months passed. Craig was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Samantha lost her job at the bank, but began working at a nonprofit organization, focusing on financial literacy for single mothers. She attended her supervised visitations consistently and followed all of Dr. Yu's recommendations for rebuilding her relationship with Jake. Warren and Jake settled into their new life together. Jake thrived in his new school, made friends, and joined the baseball team. Most importantly, he began to trust that his father's love was unconditional and permanent. One evening, as Warren helped Jake with homework, his son looked up with serious eyes. "Dad, were you really going to hurt Craig if he didn't leave?" Warren considered his answer carefully. I was going to protect you, Jake. Whatever that took. But you didn't have to hurt anybody. You just made him face consequences for being mean to me. Warren smiled at his son's insight. Sometimes the best way to defeat bad people is to let their own actions catch up with them. Like how Craig's stealing got him in trouble, and how Mom's lies made her lose her job. Exactly. Good people don't need to become bad people to win. They just need to be smart and make sure the truth comes out. Jake nodded thoughtfully, then returned to his math homework. Warren watched his son work, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He'd protected his child, exposed the truth, and ensured justice without compromising his own principles or Jake's safety. The mission was complete. Chapter 7. New Foundations. 6 months after the custody hearing, Warren and Jake had built a life that felt both stable and hopeful. Their 2-bedroom apartment had become a real home, filled with Jake's artwork, his baseball trophies, and photos of their weekend adventures hiking in the Tennessee mountains. Warren had transitioned from active duty to working as a security consultant for Tim Shepard's company, allowing him flexible hours and the ability to be present for Jake's needs. The pay was good, and more importantly, Warren could be home every evening for dinner and homework help. Jake's transformation had been remarkable. The withdrawn, anxious child who'd been found at a bus station had grown into a confident, laughing boy who trusted in his father's love. Dr. Yu was amazed at his resilience. Jake has processed the trauma in a very healthy way, she told Warren during one of their family sessions. He understands that his mother's actions weren't about him, and he's developed strong coping mechanisms. He's also learned to value consistency and honesty, important life lessons, even if they came from difficult circumstances. The relationship with Samantha remained complicated but was slowly improving. After 8 months of supervised visitation, Dr. Yu had recommended unsupervised day visits. Sam had proven herself reliable, always showing up when promised and focusing entirely on Jake's needs during their time together. She's a different person, Warren admitted to Tim during one of their regular fishing trips. I don't know if it's genuine change or just guilt, but she's doing right by Jake now. Either way, the boy's getting what he needs, Tim replied. And you did what you had to do to make that happen. Warren reflected on the methods he'd used to expose Craig and pressure Samantha into facing consequences. He'd never broken the law, but he'd certainly bent the rules of conventional conflict resolution. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. You kidding me? Tim shook his head emphatically. That piece of shit Craig convinced an 8-year-old that he was unwanted trash. Your wife was ready to have you declared mentally incompetent to steal your money. What you did was justice, plain and simple. Warren knew Tim was right, but the calculating precision with which he dismantled his enemies still bothered him sometimes. It revealed a capacity for strategic cruelty that felt at odds with the man he wanted to be for his son. Dad, you okay? Jake's voice broke through Warren's thoughts. They were at Jake's baseball game, and his son had just scored a run. I'm great, buddy. That was an excellent steal to second base. Jake beamed with pride and jogged back to the dugout. Warren watched his son interact easily with teammates and coaches, a far cry from the isolated child who'd once believed he was too much trouble for anyone to love. After the game, Jake asked if they could get ice cream with some of his teammates. Warren agreed, enjoying watching Jake laugh and joke with his friends. The boy had not only recovered from his trauma, but seemed to have developed a special empathy for other kids who felt left out or different. Dad, Jake said as they walked to Warren's truck, Bobby Martinez's parents are getting divorced, and he's really sad about it. That's tough for Bobby. Divorce is hard on kids. I told him it gets better, that even when parents make mistakes, it doesn't mean the kid did anything wrong. Warren felt a surge of pride. His son was using his own painful experience to help others, a sign of genuine healing and maturity that impressed Dr. Yu during their next session. Jake's developing strong leadership qualities and emotional intelligence, she observed. Children who successfully process trauma often become very compassionate adults. He's going to be fine, Warren. You've given him the stability and security he needed to heal. That evening, as Warren tucked Jake into bed, his son asked a question that had been building for months. Dad, do you think you and Mom will ever get back together? Warren had been dreading this conversation, but knew it was necessary. No, Jake. Your mom and I are going to stay divorced. But that doesn't mean we can't both love you and be good parents. Jake nodded seriously. I figured. You guys are too different now. But that's okay. I like our life here, and Mom's visits are good too. Warren was struck by his son's mature acceptance of the situation. Are you okay with that? Really okay? Yeah. You taught me that love is about what people do, not just what they say. You do loving things every day. Mom's learning to do loving things too, but differently. It's better this way. Warren kissed his son goodnight, marveling at the wisdom that had emerged from such painful circumstances. Jake had learned lessons about trust, consistency, and the difference between words and actions that would serve him well throughout his life. A few days later, Warren received an unexpected call from Craig's ex-wife, Catherine Hardy. Mr. Barron? My name is Catherine Hardy. I was married to Craig Novak before he met your wife. Warren was immediately alert. What can I do for you, Mrs. Hardy? I heard about what happened to your family, and I wanted to thank you. Craig destroyed my life too, left me with massive debts and a daughter who barely speaks to me because of the lies he told her about me. Warren listened as Catherine described a pattern remarkably similar to what had happened to Samantha. Craig targeting vulnerable women, isolating them from family, manipulating their finances, and then abandoning them when consequences appeared. The FBI agent handling Craig's case contacted me, Catherine continued. They're building a broader case against him for fraud and manipulation. Your documentation helped them connect the dots to other victims. How many other victims? At least 4 that they've found so far. All women with children, all left financially ruined. You stopping him probably saved other families from going through what we did. Warren felt a complex mix of satisfaction and sadness. His actions had protected not only Jake, but potentially other children from experiencing what his son had endured. Mrs. Hardy, I'm sorry for what Craig did to your family. Don't be sorry, be proud. You fought back and won. Most of us never got that chance. After the call, Warren reflected on the broader implications of what he'd uncovered and stopped. Craig hadn't been just a cheating boyfriend. He'd been a predator who systematically targeted and destroyed families. By exposing him, Warren had broken a cycle of abuse that might have continued for years. That weekend, during one of Sam's visits with Jake, she approached Warren privately. I heard about Craig's other victims, she said quietly. The FBI told me I was part of a pattern, that he'd done this before. Warren studied his ex-wife's face, seeing genuine shame and regret. How does that make you feel? Stupid. Used. Angry that I let him manipulate me into hurting Jake. She paused, but also grateful that you stopped him before he could do worse damage. Sam, Jake is what matters now. Not what Craig did, not what you did, just making sure Jake knows he's loved and protected. I know. And Warren, thank you for fighting for him when I wouldn't. He deserved better than what I gave him, and you made sure he got it. Warren nodded, accepting her gratitude without forgiveness. Some betrayals couldn't be erased, only moved past. But for Jake's sake, they could build a functional co-parenting relationship based on their shared love for their son. As Sam and Jake played catch in the backyard, Warren watched through the kitchen window. His son was laughing, confident in his worth, surrounded by people who had proven their love through actions rather than just words. The mission to protect Jake was complete, but the mission to raise him into a strong, confident man was just beginning. And Warren had never felt more prepared for a challenge that mattered. Chapter 8. The Ripple Effect. 1 year after the custody hearing, Warren's life had settled into a rhythm of purposeful contentment. Jake was excelling in 5th grade, playing on 2 baseball teams, and had developed into a natural leader among his peers. The trauma of his abandonment had been transformed into empathy and resilience that amazed everyone who knew him. Warren's work with Tim Shepard Security Company had evolved beyond simple consulting. He developed a specialized program for military families dealing with deployment-related domestic issues, helping soldiers protect their assets and children from predators who targeted military spouses during deployments. You've saved at least a dozen families this year, Tim observed during their weekly business meeting. Word spreading through military networks about your services. Warren reviewed the case files on his desk, each one representing a family that had faced situations similar to his own. Military deployments created vulnerabilities that predators like Craig exploited, and Warren had become expert at identifying and neutralizing these threats before they could destroy families. "It's good work," Warren said, "but I never want another kid to go through what Jake did." That afternoon, Warren received a call from FBI agent Ramon Gilbert, who had been investigating Craig's broader criminal network. "Warren, I wanted to update you on the Novak case. We've connected him to 11 separate instances of fraud and family manipulation over the past 8 years. The victims you helped us identify have all testified, and Craig's looking at an additional 15 years on top of his current sentence." "What about the money he stole?" "We've recovered most of it. The victims are getting restitution, including your ex-wife. She should receive about $30,000 that Craig stole from your family accounts." Warren felt a grim satisfaction. Craig would spend the next 25 years in federal prison, and his victims would at least recover their financial losses. Justice had been served, even if it couldn't undo all the damage. "Agent Gilbert, there's something else. We've identified a pattern in how these predators operate. They specifically target military families during deployments, using similar tactics and exploitation methods." "Are you proposing a broader investigation?" "I'm proposing prevention. Early identification, education for military families, and rapid response when these situations develop." Warren had been developing a comprehensive program to protect military families from domestic predators. His unique combination of special operations training, personal experience, and growing network of military contacts made him uniquely qualified to address this problem systematically. The program, which he'd named Guardian Protocol, involved educating military families about warning signs, providing secure communication channels for deployed soldiers to monitor their family's welfare, and offering rapid intervention services when predatory behavior was identified. 3 months later, Warren was invited to present Guardian Protocol to Pentagon officials responsible for military family services. The presentation was held in a secure conference room, attended by generals, social workers, and policy specialists. "Gentlemen, ladies," Warren began, his voice carrying the authority of experience. "Military families face unique vulnerabilities during deployment. These vulnerabilities are being systematically exploited by predators who target our most dedicated service members." He presented case studies, statistical analysis, and intervention strategies developed from his own experience and the dozens of cases he'd handled through Tim's company. The officials were impressed by the thoroughness of his research and the practical applicability of his solutions. General Eric Gentry, who oversaw military family services, spoke first. "Sergeant Major Barron, this is exactly the kind of proactive approach we need. How quickly could this program be implemented? With proper funding and official support, we could have pilot programs running at 5 major military bases within 6 months. Make it happen. This has the full support of the Pentagon." Warren left the meeting with authorization to implement Guardian Protocol across the military, along with substantial funding and official backing. His personal mission to protect Jake had evolved into a systematic effort to protect military families nationwide. That evening, Warren shared the news with Jake over their traditional Wednesday night pizza dinner. "So you're going to help other kids like me?" Jake asked, his eyes bright with pride. "Kids who might be in situations like you were, yes. The goal is to help them before they get hurt." Jake nodded seriously. "That's good, Dad. Nobody should have to feel like they're not wanted." Warren studied his son's face, seeing maturity and compassion that exceeded his 11 years. "How do you feel about me traveling more for this work? It would mean some overnight trips, but you'd stay with Tim and Leslie." "I think it's important work," Jake said without hesitation. "And I'm not scared anymore about you leaving. I know you always come back." The simple statement revealed how completely Jake had healed from his abandonment trauma. His trust in his father's love was absolute, providing the security necessary for him to support Warren's broader mission. Over the following months, Warren traveled to military bases across the country, training counselors, educating families, and establishing support networks. The program's success was immediate and measurable. Dozens of potential family destructions were prevented, predators were identified and prosecuted, and military marriages were strengthened through better communication and awareness. Jake thrived during this period, proud of his father's work and confident in their relationship. His visits with Samantha had evolved into a genuine friendship, with Sam fully accepting her role as the non-custodial parent who had earned Jake's time and trust. Jake's become incredibly secure and confident, Dr. Yu observed during one of their final therapy sessions. He's processed his trauma completely and developed extraordinary emotional intelligence. You should be very proud of the young man he's becoming. Warren was proud, but he was also aware that Jake's strength came from his own character as much as Warren's parenting. His son had chosen to transform pain into empathy, abandonment into compassion, and uncertainty into resilience. 1 year later, Guardian Protocol was credited with preventing over 200 family breakdowns and protecting countless military children from experiencing what Jake had endured. Warren had transformed his personal mission of revenge into a systematic program of protection that would outlast his own involvement. At Jake's 6th grade graduation, Warren watched his son receive awards for academic excellence, leadership, and community service. Jake had organized a support group for kids dealing with family problems, using his own experience to help others navigate difficult situations. "I'm proud of you, buddy," Warren said as they walked to the car after the ceremony. "I'm proud of you too, Dad. You turned something bad into something that helps lots of people." Warren smiled at his son's perspective. What had begun as a father's quest for justice had evolved into something larger and more meaningful, a legacy of protection that would benefit military families for generations. As they drove home, Warren reflected on the journey from that terrible day at the bus station to this moment of triumph. Jake had not only survived his abandonment, but had grown into a remarkable young man who used his experience to help others. The mission was complete, but the impact would continue forever. Chapter 9, Legacy. 2 years later, Warren stood at the podium of the National Military Family Conference, addressing an audience of 500 military leaders, family advocates, and social workers. Guardian Protocol had become a model program, implemented at 47 military installations worldwide, and Jake, now 13 and sitting proudly in the front row, had inspired a generation of military children to find strength in adversity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Warren began, his voice carrying the confidence of a man whose mission had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations. "We gather today to discuss protecting our most precious assets, our families. 3 years ago, I came home from deployment to find my own family destroyed by a predator who had systematically manipulated and abandoned my 8-year-old son." The audience was silent, riveted by Warren's story and the transformation it had sparked. He spoke about finding Jake at the bus station, about the careful campaign to expose Craig and protect his son, and about the broader program that had emerged from their personal crisis. Today, that same boy, my son Jake, has helped counsel over 200 military children through family crises. He's shown us that trauma can be transformed into strength, abandonment into empathy, and pain into purpose. Jake stood briefly to acknowledge the applause, his mature smile reflecting the confidence and security that had replaced the frightened child Warren had found at that bus station years ago. After the presentation, Warren was approached by Colonel Mickey Cassidy, the same Mickey Cassidy who had been Craig's Vegas bookie and whose debt collectors had helped pressure Craig into his final breakdown. "Sergeant Major Barron," Mickey said, extending his hand with genuine respect, "I wanted to personally thank you for your work with Guardian Protocol. My nephew benefited from your program at Fort Bragg." Warren shook his hand, noting the irony that the lone shark who'd helped destroy Craig was now expressing gratitude for the program that had emerged from that destruction. "Every family protected makes the work worthwhile, Colonel. It's general now, actually. And Warren, what you did to stop Craig Novak was surgical. Professional. I've seen a lot of operations in my career, but the way you dismantled that bastard without compromising your integrity or your son's safety, that was art." Warren smiled slightly. "It was justice, and it was necessary. Damn right it was. That son of a bitch deserved everything he got." That evening, Warren and Jake had dinner at their favorite restaurant. the same diner where Warren had first learned the full extent of his son's abandonment 3 years earlier. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. Then, Jake had been a broken child convinced he was unwanted. Now, he was a confident teenager who'd found his purpose in helping others. "Dad, I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up," Jake said, cutting into his steak with a matter-of-fact tone that had become his trademark. "Oh yeah? What's that?" "I want to be a military psychologist. Like Dr. You, but specifically for kids who've been through what I went through. I want to help them understand that they're not responsible for adults' bad choices." Warren felt a surge of pride and love, so intense it almost brought tears to his eyes. His son had not only healed from his trauma, but had chosen to dedicate his life to healing others. "That's a perfect choice, buddy. You'll be great at it. I've already been talking to Dr. You about what courses to take in high school, and she's going to help me apply for internships with Guardian Protocol when I'm old enough." Warren nodded, recognizing that Jake's career path was already taking shape around the mission they'd built together. The boy who'd once been thrown away like trash was now preparing to spend his life ensuring no other child experienced that same abandonment. 6 months later, Warren received news that brought their story full circle. Craig Novak had been found dead in his federal prison cell, killed by another inmate who'd learned about Craig's history of targeting military families. While Warren felt no satisfaction in Craig's death, he recognized it as a final closing of that dark chapter. Samantha had rebuilt her life as well, working as a director of a nonprofit organization that provided financial counseling to single mothers. Her relationship with Jake had evolved into something healthy and supportive, though Jake remained primarily with Warren. Sam had learned to be grateful for the relationship she had with her son rather than bitter about what she'd lost. "Warren," she said during one of their quarterly check-ins about Jake's welfare, "I know I can never undo what I did, but I want you to know that watching you fight for Jake taught me what real love looks like. You saved him, and in a way, you saved me too." Warren accepted her gratitude with the same measured response he'd always maintained. The past couldn't be changed, but the future could be protected. On Jake's 14th birthday, Warren presented him with a gift that symbolized how far they'd both come. A custom engraved compass with the inscription, "True North. Home is where you're loved." "This is to remind you," Warren said, "that no matter how far you travel or what challenges you face, you always have a home with someone who loves you unconditionally." Jake studied the compass with the serious expression he developed from meaningful moments. "Dad, can I ask you something I've always wondered about?" "Anything, buddy. When you found out about Mom and Craig, when you saw me at the bus station, you could have just taken me away and started over somewhere else. Why did you choose to fight instead of just leaving?" Warren considered the question carefully. "Because running away would have taught you that problems could be escaped rather than solved. I wanted you to learn that when someone threatens your family, you don't run, you fight. But you fight smart, and you fight for justice, not just revenge." Jake nodded slowly. "And that's why Guardian Protocol works. It's not about getting even. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves." "Exactly. Revenge is about the past. Justice is about the future." As Warren tucked the compass into his pocket, Warren reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun as a father's desperate mission to protect his abandoned son had become a program that protected thousands of military families worldwide. Jake had grown from a traumatized 8-year-old into a confident, compassionate teenager with a clear sense of purpose. Warren had evolved from a betrayed husband seeking justice into a recognized leader in military family protection. Most importantly, they had both learned that the strongest families aren't the ones that never face adversity. They're the ones that face it together and emerge stronger on the other side. That night, as Warren performed his nightly check on Jake's room, he found his son reading a letter from a military child in Germany whose family had been saved by Guardian Protocol. "This kid says his dad's deployment was supposed to end his parents' marriage, but Guardian Protocol helped them identify and stop the person who was trying to break them up," Jake said, looking up from the letter. "How does that make you feel? Like what happened to us mattered? Like it meant something bigger than just our story?" Warren smiled, recognizing that his son had grasped the most important lesson of their ordeal. That personal pain could be transformed into purposeful action that benefits others. Get some sleep, buddy. We've got that Guardian Protocol Youth Advisory meeting tomorrow. Night, Dad. Love you. Love you too, Jake. As Warren turned off the light and closed the door, he felt the deep satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Not just the mission to protect Jake, or even the mission to create Guardian Protocol, but the larger mission of raising a son who would make the world better for having lived in it. Jake Barron, the boy who'd once been thrown away like trash, was growing into a young man who would spend his life ensuring no child ever felt that worthless again. The legacy was secure. Epilogue. 10 years later, Dr. Jake Barron completed his PhD in military family psychology at age 24, becoming the youngest director in Guardian Protocol's history. His doctoral dissertation, From Abandonment to Advocacy, Transforming Childhood Trauma into Purposeful Action, became required reading for military family counselors worldwide. Warren, now a retired general and director emeritus of Guardian Protocol, watched his son address the same National Military Family Conference where Warren had first shared their story. Jake's presentation focused on a new initiative, training military children who'd overcome family trauma to become peer counselors for other at-risk youth. My father taught me that the strongest response to betrayal isn't revenge, Jake told the audience. It's ensuring that no one else has to experience what you did. Today, Guardian Protocol isn't just protecting military families. It's empowering military children to protect each other. In the audience, Warren felt the completion of a circle that had begun with a broken 8-year-old at a bus station. That abandoned child had become a leader who would protect thousands of families through